Essay Writing Tips: How to Write Essays on Different Topics. Basics of Writing by Maria Obydenna. Part 3. Writing an Essay. How to write a formal essay. The draft serves as a foundation for the essay. The boundary between draft and essay is not always fixed, as the essay itself can be fluid and open to change. Typically, a first draft requires further improvements. The author should analyze the topic, context, and readership, determine the essay type, and outline main ideas. Most essays do not require significant changes during editing, but clarity of thought is vital. The outline should be ready before writing, with a clear goal, thesis, and main arguments. Write from beginning to end or out of order, as many writers do. The draft provides clear direction for development and will not change the core content. Many writers start with the main body and write the introduction and conclusion afterward. And that's right. Clarity of thought is important. As mentioned above, the outline should be ready before writing the text and clearly articulate a goal, a thesis, and the main arguments. And then just write. You can start from the beginning and write to the end, or you can write each paragraph separately, in any order. The draft conveniently lays the foundation for the forthcoming essay, offering a clear direction for its development. This will not affect the content of the essay. Essay structure. A formal essay is a nonfiction work whose purpose is to persuade the audience or inform them about an event, phenomenon, subject, or person. A formal essay, unlike an informal or free essay, has a clear structure. It includes an introduction, a body, and a conclusion. Formal writing is not better than informal writing. Each style has a specific purpose. Writers should pick the essay type that fits their needs. Different topics call for different writing styles. Essay introduction. An introduction is a crucial part of an essay. The reader decides whether to continue reading based on it. Typically, it is one or two informative paragraphs that summarize the topic and the author's viewpoint. The introduction should be engaging and capture the audience's attention. The introduction should immediately capture the reader's attention. It can start with a short or interesting overview of the topic, a fact that emphasizes the importance of the topic, an unexpected statement or fact related to the essay topic, quotes from a famous person or expert, contradiction, someone else's opinion against the opinion of the author. The first sentence should capture the reader's interest. Avoid broad generalizations in the introduction. Begin with material that is relevant, as most readers are familiar with the subject matter. Initiating the discussion from the earliest historical context may not always be effective. Briefly list the essay's main parts so the audience knows what to expect. Avoid presenting arguments in the introduction, just list them. Do not use long or confusing thesis statements. Do not try to put all arguments in the thesis. Avoid phrases like, "This essay proves," or "I'm going to." Tell readers enough about the topic to pique interest, not so much that they lose interest. When writing the introduction, the author can choose a certain approach to inspire interest in the readers and encourage them to read the work. A standard introduction usually answers one of the following questions: who, what, when, where, why, and how. The answers to one of these questions will help the reader understand what the essay will be about. The straightforward introduction provides the reader with a general idea of the process or phenomenon, and the author explains the causes and consequences in the essay's main body. This approach is ideal for short essays. An informative introduction immediately tells the reader what the work will be about. An authoritarian introduction provides the reader with information in a commanding tone and conveys the author's confidence in a particular position. A quote in the introduction begins with a selected quote and immediately grabs the reader's attention. An unexpected introduction should surprise readers and be interesting. The body and paragraphs. A paragraph means a block of written text that consists of sentences related to each other in content, or a set of related sentences that relate to the same topic, thesis, or argument. The author must present facts logically and structure ideas clearly. A good paragraph starts with a topic sentence and supporting sentences, all logically connected. Ensure paragraphs are properly structured and clearly reveal the argument. Paragraphs with only 2 or 3 sentences are usually insufficient. A paragraph should consist of 3 to 5 or more sentences. When working on an essay, you can follow 3 basic principles that will help you structure your paragraph. Paragraphs begin with a main idea that guides the development of the author's thought. This is accomplished by using the topic sentence, which is the first sentence of each paragraph. The topic sentence clearly tells the reader what the paragraph will be about.
After the topic sentence, the author explains the argument and provides details. For example, when working on the essay Causes of Global Warming, the first paragraph of the main part will have the following topic sentence. Greenhouse gas emissions are one of the main causes of global warming. The sentences will elaborate on this argument. The author can cite statistical data and scientific facts to support the stated argument. After explaining the main idea, you can illustrate it by giving some examples. For example, the amount of carbon dioxide emissions into the atmosphere has increased 5 times over the last century. In this case, it will be necessary to indicate the source of the information, a scientific article, a statistical data source, etc. Figures and facts will help the reader better understand the main idea. The last sentence of the paragraph signals to the reader that the author will introduce a new reasoning. For example, in addition to a significant increase in carbon emissions into the Earth's atmosphere, scientists note significant changes in solar activity. The next paragraph will discuss the effect of solar radiation on global warming. Linking words and linking sentences are necessary because they help smoothly move from one paragraph to another. Paragraph content depends on the topic and what examples or facts the author can give to support an idea. The writer should define the approach and apply a formula to each paragraph. These steps help structure paragraphs in a formal essay. If the topic does not need data or examples, change the structure. The main points depend on the author's goal. Arguments. Arguments are statements, reasons, and evidence that contain a well-founded opinion and are presented by the author to confirm a certain point of view. Arguments, in Latin, argumentum, from the verb arguo, show, find, prove, are facts, phenomena of social life, events, life situations, real experience, scientific evidence, and references to the opinion of scientists. Supporting the topic means selecting facts and convincing the reader of the truth and the pragmatic rationale behind the author's stance. In using arguments, the author can present a questionable or controversial opinion to the audience and convince readers of his point of view, an opinion that the audience considers to be true or credible from the point of view of one or another norm, or moral or ethical, better than the values, goals, or interests of the other social group. Simply put, an argument is a theoretically or practically proven fact that supports the thesis and the main topic of the essay. Each paragraph of the essay should have only one point of view that supports the thesis. It is better to provide 2 arguments in favor of each of the statements. One argument is insufficient evidence, and 3 arguments can overload the essay. The argument appeals to logic and provides evidence to support the author's position. It is important to present arguments in a logical order and to draw conclusions based on them. Types of arguments. Arguments can be of different content. Theoretical generalizations are not only used as an explanation of known or new phenomena, but also perform the role of evidence in argumentation. Statements about facts play the role of arguments. Single events or phenomena characterized by a certain time, place, and specific conditions of occurrence and existence are called facts or actual data. Arguments can be axioms, that is, obvious facts that are accepted without proof. The role of arguments is to define the main concepts of a specific field of knowledge.
The ability and logic of reasoning depend on how carefully the source material is selected and analyzed, and how clearly the arguments are presented. Each essay thesis must be carefully argued. Insufficiently strong, questionable arguments can destroy or weaken the thesis. The main classification of arguments is a classification that has been known since antiquity. Psychological, affecting the reader's feelings; logical, influence the mind of the reader; psychological arguments appeal to emotions. Using arguments, the author creates a certain emotional state in the reader, subjective confidence in the appropriateness or inappropriateness of the author's arguments. Logical arguments appeal to the mind of the audience and are logically connected to judgments. Logical arguments are the following: theoretical or empirical generalizations and conclusions, proven laws of science, chemistry, physics, biology, theorems of mathematics, etc. Obvious propositions that do not require proof, axioms. Definition of the main concepts of a specific field of knowledge. Statement of fact, factual material in which approximate information is not acceptable, statistical data, scientific facts, etc. The role of facts, including scientific ones, is very important in justifying certain positions. In the process of argumentation, it is necessary to distinguish between fact and opinion. A fact is an undeniable, real phenomenon that actually happened. An opinion is the author's own view or another person's view of an event or phenomenon. Facts remain untouched by our will. They exist autonomously, beyond subjective influence, and regardless of how we use and treat them. A person's thoughts are influenced by various subjective factors. Opinions can be biased and wrong, and that is why facts are more reliable arguments that should be trusted and used in an essay. One of the most important and weighty pieces of evidence is statistical data. It's hard to argue with numbers, but you cannot abuse them because the audience's attention will weaken. The main thing is that the data reflect the real state of affairs. Topic sentence. Usually, but not always, the first sentence of each paragraph is the thesis, and the paragraph reveals the main points of that thesis. If the topic sentence or argument is not the first sentence of the paragraph, it should be clear which sentence is the topic. The topic sentence has the following characteristics. This sentence introduces the main idea of the paragraph and expresses an opinion or a statement. The topic sentence is related to the thesis. A topic sentence is not a fact, but a certain point of view. A topic sentence is not something from the source. This is the author's idea or argument. Each sentence in the paragraph will support and justify that sentence. Explanation after the topic sentence describes the main idea. A paragraph is a group of sentences that support or logically continue the topic sentence of the paragraph. Sentences reflect the author's opinion. Specific details are crucial for demonstrating that the ideas have a scientific basis. The author should use facts, examples, research, and expert opinions to support the argument. It is good to include names of the experts, places, dates, and other specific information in the essay. The author can give numbers and dates in the examples.
A few guiding principles for authors to keep in mind. Make sure that the details in the essay reflect the author's point of view. A common mistake is that the source's information does not support the author's point of view. Remember that one example does not prove anything. Use more than one example or source in a paragraph. Clear and complete explanations are very important because readers expect the author to explain the topic. Examples and details support the essay topic. Your explanation is not just a repetition of the source material. You have to interpret it. Your explanation should not simply restate a thesis or theme, but explain how the source supports and substantiates the main ideas. Do not rely on sources too much. The paragraph should contain the author's ideas about the main topic. Balance the source material and your own ideas about the topic in each point. Make sure the essay presents the material logically and has good transitions from paragraph to paragraph. Check the connection between ideas and paragraphs. The essay should have a clear and logical structure. The author needs to show readers how the ideas are connected. The last sentence of each paragraph should emphasize a point of view, a thesis, or prepare the reader to move on to the next paragraph. Do not end the paragraph with a reference to the source. Each concluding sentence is your own idea and perspective on the problem. Do not write body paragraphs that are too long. Readers find it difficult to focus on long blocks of text. In general, a third or half page is the standard paragraph length. If your paragraph is much longer, divide it into 2 or 3 parts. Essay conclusion. The final paragraph, the conclusion, must summarize the information that you presented in the main part. However, try to avoid repeating the arguments or content of the main body of the essay that you have already used before. Find a way to paraphrase sentences from the main text and summarize the ideas you have come up with. Be specific. As in the introduction, avoid general information about the subject of the analysis in the conclusion. The conclusion may be a shorter paragraph than the body paragraphs of the essay, but it is the most important. The reader will remember the information from the conclusion. Remind readers of the main ideas of the essay and summarize your arguments. Paraphrase the thesis in different words. Briefly summarize the main points of the essay. Thus, the reader will not get bored with repeating the same sentences and phrases. Use your own thoughts, not sources. Sources should not be cited in the conclusion. Do not mention or inform the reader about any new information or make new arguments. Do not ask a question that leaves the reader unsure. The purpose of the essay is not to confuse the reader, but to enlighten.
Show the importance of your conclusions. Explain to readers why the essay topic is important. What does it mean in the general context? What question does it solve? What does the essay say about your topic? Does it contain information about the future of your topic? What should readers understand after reading the essay? The essay should end with an idea that the reader can think about after reading the work, a prediction, or a recommendation. The conclusion of the essay should make an unforgettable impression on the reader. There are also certain phrases and expressions that you can use to summarize your essay. Based on the stated facts, we can conclude that this, as we can see, confirms the opinion that therefore. Summing up, we can say that the conclusion of the essay can be in the form of a closed paragraph. It is as important as the introduction and the first paragraph, which makes an impression on the reader. Your last paragraph will give the final impression. The author must leave readers with a favorable impression of the essay. The reader evaluates the essay as a whole, but the conclusion, which summarizes the arguments, will be the most important part. The function of the final paragraph is to conclude the essay. The author should not repeat the arguments and facts presented in the body, but he should find a way to summarize and write an expressive conclusion. Just the last paragraph gives the impression that the essay is relevant and that the author has thoroughly analyzed the topic. Many writers write the introduction and conclusion after writing the body paragraphs to make sure they summarize the information in the main body. For beginners, an essay can be written starting with the introduction,
but after the main body is complete, check that the introduction and conclusion match the topic of the piece. How to write an argumentative essay. In an argumentative essay, the author proves that an opinion, theory, or hypothesis about a certain issue is correct. An argumentative essay is similar to a persuasive essay, but the difference is that the author argues a point rather than convincing the reader that a certain position is correct. The author tries to convince the reader to accept a particular point of view through logically constructed arguments. Basic requirements for argumentative essays. Arguments must be statements that reflect the topic. A question cannot be an argument. Arguments must be supported by solid evidence. An argumentative essay is based on the positions for and against. Structure the essay well. Use linking phrases. Understand the audience's basic needs. How can you convince readers? Research the topic and make sure the evidence is compelling. Conclude with a thoroughly reasoned synthesis. Tips for writing an argumentative essay. Make a list of pros and cons before you start writing your essay. Choose the most important arguments that support your thesis, pros, and the most important counter-arguments to refute, cons. When working on an argumentative essay, you can choose one of 3 possible options for constructing an essay.
Argumentative essay. 1. Statement, main argument. Position for argument 1. Position for argument 2. Position against. The author must clearly formulate counter-arguments in order to convincingly refute the main arguments, plus refutation of the position against. Conclusion. Argumentative essay. 2. Position against plus refutation. These are arguments with which the author disagrees. The author must clearly formulate counter-arguments to convincingly refute the main thesis. Position 4. Argument 1. Position 4. Argument 2. Conclusion. Argumentative essay. 3. Statement, main argument. Conclusion. Position 4. 1. Refutation of the position 4. 1. Position 4. 2. Refutation of the position 4. 2. Position 4. 3. Refutation of the position 4. 3. Position against plus rebuttal. These are arguments with which the author disagrees. The author must clearly formulate counter-arguments and then refute them. Use transition words to make a logical transition between arguments and, most importantly, moving from arguments for to arguments against, and vice versa. Contrary to my position, others believe that. Opponents of this idea claim that. Those who disagree argue that. Some people may disagree with this idea, but despite this, one argument in support of this is, it cannot be denied that one of the positive aspects of this problem, undoubtedly. However, on the other hand, if you want to show the reader that you completely disagree with a counter-argument, you can use. Having seen this evidence, it is impossible to agree that they, despite the fact that, let's consider the disadvantages. Many believe that, however, we suggest considering what the disadvantages of this are. These are just a few examples of connecting phrases and word combinations that will help the author to express his thoughts logically and consistently. Use facts, statistics, quotes, and examples
to convince readers of your arguments.
How to write an analytical essay. An analytical essay is one of the most popular types for studying, analyzing, and interpreting events, subjects, or phenomena. To write a good analytical essay, it is necessary to structure it and to build an argument logically. The analytical essay should have an introduction and a clear thesis, the main argument. An introductory paragraph is used to inform the reader about what the author will discuss in the essay. Every literary work discusses at least one main question. In the introduction, the author defines the idea or problem he wants to analyze in the essay. An analysis of the phenomenon or problem, the main body of the essay. The question that the author has chosen for analysis is related to the argument. After describing the problem, justify the argument. As you begin the analysis, pay attention to the stylistic devices that you can use to convey certain information and your thoughts. You need to ensure you have achieved your goal and communicated your ideas to the reader. Do not forget to support your assumptions with examples and references to scientific literature. The author's personal attitude toward the phenomenon or problem may constitute a separate part of the text. The author's position will help the reader to better understand the essay and form a personal impression of the text. The author does not need to have only a positive attitude towards the phenomenon or problem. The analysis should be critical. Justify any objections and use evidence or scientific research. The author's personal position should be clearly outlined throughout the work, not just in the conclusion. Conclusions should be related to the analysis and arguments presented in the essay. Your conclusions should explain to the reader the connection between the arguments and summarize the main information of the essay. Tips for writing an analytical essay. An analytical essay should be properly structured. Carefully plan what you want to write before you start writing. It is a good idea to anticipate what your conclusion will be before you start writing. When the author knows what logical conclusion he wants to reach, it helps to properly organize the material and choose the appropriate arguments. Analytical essays usually use the present tense. Be objective. Avoid using the first person. For example, instead of writing, "I think because," use the phrases, "according to statistics, because." Moreover, in addition, because. This statement touches on key issues. Example, it should be noted that do not use jargon or colloquial language, the language of an informal essay. Avoid using etc. This word is often used by authors who have nothing more to say. Come up with an original title and do not use the essay topic as a title, if possible. Analysis does not mean recounting facts and arguments. Many authors fall into the trap of telling the reader what is happening rather than analyzing the events. The purpose of the analysis is to explain how the author interprets the event or phenomenon and how he or she wants the readers to understand the essay topic and the author's opinion. Write the idea of each paragraph as a sentence to make sure the paragraph answers the research question. When reading additional sources, it is advisable to take notes of important information. It may take some time, but writing the essay will go faster if you already have all the arguments. When working on a formal essay, it is very important not to use too much emotional vocabulary. The reader may distrust the author if the author exaggerates or hyperbolizes the truth. If you want to gain the reader's trust, do not use too much hyperbole and other stylistic devices in a formal essay. Mastering the skills of working on a formal essay allows the author to use this type of writing for a variety of purposes. Clear and concise writing language is a key element of a formal essay. To write an essay, follow common practices and carefully support your thesis and arguments. The best formal essays develop a topic but pay little attention to the author's personal position or reasoning. The author only expresses his position regarding the topic and arguments.
How to write an informal essay.
In informal essays, the author shares his experience, a perspective on a particular problem, and his emotions with the reader. However, this is where the difficulty of writing an essay lies. The author needs to share not only his personal experience, but to also describe an event, phenomenon, or process. Writing an essay can be challenging, and writing a free essay, especially a reflective one, is even more challenging. The writer needs to logically present their thoughts on a topic and express different points of view. An essay can be informative and persuasive, but the writer should use more figurative language than in formal essays. Essay structure. An informal essay, free or literary, is a literary and journalistic work in which the author expresses emotions and feelings about an event that happened and gives their own reasoning on a certain occasion. To start writing an informal essay, choose a topic. For example, it can be the topic family values in the UK. But this is a very general topic. It is necessary to narrow it down to a more specific subtopic and preferably make it personal to the author. Here are some topics to inspire you. What family values does the family have? The influence of family values on the choice of a person's profession. Motherhood. Families with many children and families with one child. How have family values changed over the past 100 years in my country? These are different versions of the title that can be used for the general topic, family values. To choose a topic, the author must determine a certain angle of view of the problem, under which he will consider the topic, and the reason from which he will express his opinion. When writing an essay, the author must be objective, while also sharing his own ideas with readers and expanding readers' knowledge of the world around them, rather than simply creating vivid images in the reader's imagination. Sometimes writers borrow free writing techniques from creative writing to make essays interesting and original. But this should be done with caution, and remember that the essay is not a work of fiction. The free writing method. The peculiarity of an informal essay is that you can write with a clearly defined plan or use the free writing or free writing method. Do not confuse a free essay with free writing. Free writing is a type of independent writing that allows the author to transfer personal thoughts from the head to paper. Free writing is a writing strategy developed by Peter Elbow in his book Writing Without Teachers in 1973. This strategy is similar to brainstorming, but the writer writes thoughts in the form of sentences and paragraphs without stopping. This approach increases the flow of ideas and reduces the likelihood that the author will accidentally lose a good one. Usually, the free writing method is used for 15 or 20 minutes, or until you feel that you have enough arguments to continue working on the essay. This process can be helpful if you are starting from scratch and are not even sure what you want to write an essay about. Free writing is important and can be useful to all authors, but it focuses specifically on transferring the author's thoughts to paper. Just write. Don't worry about text perfection. Don't worry about grammar. Keep writing. If you are missing information, mark the place in the text, then do additional research and add the missing information. Do not forget about plagiarism and paraphrasing. When you have enough arguments, start editing the text. Please evaluate the source whenever you use the opinions of other authors. Don't wait until the last minute. You will need time to revise the final version of the essay.
Like a formal essay, an informal essay can be based on an outline. An essay outline should briefly list the main points you are going to write about. You don't have to follow a formal 5-paragraph structure, but your essay will still need an introduction, body, and conclusion. Plan what you will write in each paragraph. Formulate your main idea and think about the main goal you want to achieve. Are you trying to convince the reader of something or just want to share a personal experience? It's important to focus on specific problems and to have a clear thesis when writing a piece. This is the sole condition under which the essay maintains logical coherence. It's best to start an informal essay by giving the reader some background information. This may sound too formal for an essay, but you should make the introduction really exciting. When formulating an idea, you can share your personal experience. You can include a quote that reflects your point of view. Then express your personal thoughts on the particular issue that the quote is about. An informal essay should reflect the author's opinion on a specific topic. A clearly defined thesis or position of the author is necessary at the end of the introduction. This sentence informs the reader what to expect. However, the introduction should not be too formal. Tell the reader what the essay is about and what its main purpose and goal are. A literary essay is not just a written text of any structure. It is not a flow of thoughts in written form, but a reflection on a certain well-defined topic. Think of a literary essay as a writing piece in which you defend your point of view against an opposing opinion. This will make it easier to work on the text and the sources. Even though this is an informal essay, the writing piece should remain persuasive. Use only reliable and verified facts to convince the reader of your point of view. Tips for writing a literary essay. Use informal language, but not slang that the reader may not understand. Break the main body, if it is very long, into shorter paragraphs to make it easier to read. Structure the paragraphs using the ideas you have noted before. There must be a logical connection between them. Use short sentences along with long ones. Too long structures are not acceptable for a free essay. Give the essay the right emotional atmosphere. Express your own opinion on the thesis of the essay. Finally, write the conclusion of the essay. Summarize everything. However, do not repeat sentences. Just briefly summarize the main points of the discussion so the reader gets a sense of the essay's main idea and remembers it. The main thing is to use a language that the reader can understand. Illustrating your author's position, carefully select style, main ideas, and form of expression. Completion of the conclusion signifies the full development of the essay's main body and overall structure.
Linguistic means. Literature distills reality through the prism of the writer's inner world, reshaping the external into a deeply personal reflection. An essayist or novelist does not merely describe events or phenomena he sees around him. He conveys his individual vision of the world on paper. One and the same phenomenon, such as a thunderstorm or the blossoming of trees in the spring, love or grief, each writer describes in his own way. To achieve this, the writer draws upon the expressive potential of literary language and stylistic techniques. In literary essays, it is appropriate to use more literary devices than informal ones. These can be epithets, metaphors, synonyms, antonyms, homonyms, idioms, similes, allegories, hyperboles, etc. Different means of expression and stylistic techniques help the author to vividly convey information and influence the reader's imagination. Linguistic devices include figurative expressions and metaphorically charged vocabulary, as well as synonymy, antonymy, homonymy, and polysemy. The author can use various tropes, such as epithets, metaphors, similes, appeals, slogans, figurative vocabulary, neologisms, and others. In informal essays, the author chooses the emotionally colored words to affect the reader's feelings. The writer uses a set of linguistic and stylistic devices that shape the author's style. For a more accurate understanding of stylistic devices and their use,
The following are among the most commonly employed linguistic devices in literary essays. An epithet emphasizes a characteristic feature or defining quality of an object or phenomenon and helps the word acquire a new meaning or semantic shade. Epithets do not describe objective reality, but help the author express their position. They are often found in descriptive essays. For example, the Big Apple for New York City, the City of Lights for Paris, and others. Metaphor is a word or phrase used figuratively to compare two objects with each other on the basis of a common criterion. In a metaphor, certain words and phrases reveal the essence of some phenomena and objects through others by similarity or contrast. Metaphor is a complex linguistic stylistic device. For example, the construction heap of hair, hair compared to a haystack, lake of the soul, comparing the human soul to a deep lake, golden hands, the hands of a human craftsman compared to a precious, expensive metal, and others. With their help, the author creates a special atmosphere and bright images. The text becomes more emotionally rich and expressive. This helps convey the author's idea to the reader. A simile is a figure of speech that compares two unlikely things using the comparative conjunction as to make the description more vivid. A simile has a lot in common with a metaphor. A comparison usually contains the conjunction as. For example, as fast as lightning, as brave as a lion, as wise as an owl, and others. Hyperbole is a language device that clearly and deliberately exaggerates the features of the described subject to attract the reader's attention. For example, we haven't seen each other for 100 years. I could eat a house. Sea of tears, and others. Litosis is the opposite of hyperbole. It uses a negative statement to emphasize a positive meaning. Its purpose is to reduce the signs or qualities of objects or phenomena. This is a deliberate reduction by the author of some details to scale or proportionally emphasize the importance of other features. For example, she's not unkind, not too shabby, it's not bad, and others. Metonymy is a trope that creates an image based on one of the meanings. This is the transfer of the name from one subject to another, continuity of signs. For example, the athlete took gold instead of gold medal, or the pen is mightier than the sword instead of literature, and others. Linguistic tools help the author create a vivid picture in the reader's mind. If an author wants to add figurative language, the best step is drafting. Language is a vital tool for communication. It is a means of conveying thoughts and ideas. Completing the text with tropes is not enough. It is necessary to use them so that each of them plays a unique role in the text.
Editing. Editing aligns the text with contemporary linguistic standards, addressing grammatical, syntactic, and stylistic inaccuracies. Editing enhances the quality and coherence of the final draft. The essay is finished, but the process of working on the piece of writing is not over yet. The next step is to improve the essay and strengthen the content. Beginners need to know what to correct. Before you edit the text, you need to understand what you need to change, add, or delete. Get feedback. Sometimes authors have the opportunity to ask for feedback from an experienced writer or editor, or at least just ask a friend to read the essay. You can also ask a friend to look over parts of your essay. Most friends are happy to help. Consider reviewers' feedback thoughtfully while keeping in mind that the essay remains an expression of your personal viewpoint. Look at the essay requirements. Notice what you have and mark what you need to fix. The form of the work. Create an outline or plan for your essay, indicating the main point for each topic and the arguments supporting it.
This will help you assess the clarity and organization of ideas, as well as their relevance to the research question. Read each sentence of your essay aloud. After each one, ask yourself, does this statement or sentence support the thesis? If not, cross out, edit, or replace the sentence. Read each body paragraph. First, read the paragraph, and then read its last sentence. Is this point justified? Are there enough details, facts, examples, descriptions, and expert opinions in a paragraph? Reread the essay from the point of view of the readers. Imagine that you are reading the essay for the first time, which is difficult, so it is worth asking someone else to read it. As you read, write down any comments or questions the audience might have for the author. Make sure the style and material match the audience's needs. If you feel that you need to improve the text, use the following tips. Eliminate any unnecessary or irrelevant ideas, words, sentences, or paragraphs. Add new perspectives, details, or explanations. Reorganize words, sentences, or paragraphs in a logical sequence. Rewrite words, sentences, or paragraphs if they may be incomprehensible to the reader. Review the essay again. Check out your second option and keep revising and improving the text. Experienced writers tend to revise their work several times. Once you are satisfied with the content of the essay, it is time to begin the editing process. Try to do this a week before publication. Editing will make the essay more precise and easier to understand. Avoid complex structures. When editing, you should check each sentence and ask yourself, does this sentence make sense? What does it tell the reader? Is the language clear and concise? Grammar guides and dictionaries are useful tools for checking the correct spelling of words and expressions during editing.
Experiment with the following strategies until you find what works best for you. Read the essay slowly, or ask someone to read it aloud. You will catch errors, repetitions, and a lack of logical structure, and you can correct them. If you do not know how to correct mistakes, use grammar guides and dictionaries. Use the spell checker and grammar checker in Microsoft Word. Text editors will help you find and correct errors, but not all. In today's world, checking for grammatical errors is available thanks to a word processor on a computer, which allows you to reduce the time it takes to correct the most common errors. But it shouldn't be your only tool. Check logical coherence between concepts. Read the beginning and end of each paragraph. Make sure they are logically connected. Read paragraph by paragraph and check the logical connections between them. If the ideas are not logically connected, make a transition. Add a pronoun, a synonym, or another sentence. Use concise language. Find all very long sentences, 25 or more words. Can they be rewritten more clearly and succinctly? Read each sentence and ask yourself, is it necessary for this paragraph? Is it possible to add something new? Read each sentence word by word. Is every word necessary? Maybe remove or rewrite something. Could passive constructions with verbs be rewritten as active? Rebuild structures with passive verbs into active constructions. Active constructions are generally preferred as they align more closely with contemporary usage norms. Check for repetition and lack of variety. Read each sentence and ask yourself, what is the purpose of this sentence? Does this paragraph introduce a new idea? Does it support or explain a previous idea? Does it simply repeat previous information with other words and phrases? Look at the length of each sentence. Both short and long sentences should be used in the essay. Authors should use structures and sentences of different lengths. It is appropriate to use simple structures. However, when you want to use long, complex sentences, and this is appropriate for a certain type of essay and your writing style, this is not against the norms of the essay genre. The thing to avoid is writing monotonous, consecutive sentences.
Find words that are repeated many times. Use a thesaurus to find synonyms or idioms. Correct sentence structure. Go through sentence by sentence. Mark the subject, 1, and the predicate, 2, in each sentence. Make sure each sentence has a noun and a verb. Correct the necessary sentences and check the word order. Check choice of phrases and clarity. Find all the long phrases. Can they be replaced with shorter or more appropriate phrases and expressions? Read the essay without focusing on the facts. When you read, are you curious? If you need to read the text twice, readers may perceive such a text as complex and difficult to understand.
When you think your essay is ready, it's time to do some extra checking and correct mistakes. If you don't spend enough time editing, your essay can be full of mistakes that will show your audience that you were too lazy, rushed, or indifferent to correct them. Simple strategies for identifying textual errors. Do not review the essay for 24 hours. Print an essay. You will see errors that you did not see on the screen. Start with the last sentence and read the essay starting with the conclusion. This will help focus on grammar rather than content. Think about the grammar, spelling, punctuation, and meaning of each word. If you are still not sure, ask someone for help. Use a dictionary or grammar guide. Correct all errors found. Print the essay and check it again. The more you practice, the better your language and writing style. Another important factor is the accuracy of what you write. Accuracy of speech is not only clarity of expressions and language turns, but also the correct use of scientific terms, rules of grammar, punctuation, and spelling. Excessive grammatical and spelling errors can undermine the credibility of your writing. It may create a negative impression and hinder the reader's engagement with the text. How to avoid plagiarism. Plagiarism is the use of someone else's words or ideas without reference to the source. Plagiarism is the act of presenting another person's ideas or information as their own. Using someone else's ideas and sentences is considered plagiarism. When an author uses scientific articles, books, or other materials written by another author, published on the internet, or printed without the author's permission and without citing the source, this is considered deliberate plagiarism. Sometimes the author can be accused of unconscious plagiarism if he does not indicate the external source from which he borrowed the information. Since you are looking for information for an essay, do not rely on your memory, but carefully note the sources. This will help avoid plagiarism. Plagiarism is a violation of copyright law. If the author has deliberately used the work of another author without any reference to the original source, it is plagiarism. Warning: plagiarism. Not your words, not your statistics, not your ideas. If you copied these ideas, where are the references? Exact expressions and ideas are the intellectual property of another author. It refers to a sequence of words, phrases, and sentences that helps the author formulate their own thoughts and ideas on paper. It is a misconception to assume that individual words belong exclusively to a particular person. It is impossible. Deliberately presenting another person's written work as their own constitutes both plagiarism and a breach of copyright law. When an author knowingly claims someone else's work as their own, it violates both ethical standards and legal copyright protections. Examples of intentional plagiarism include copying and pasting from internet sources without paraphrasing or borrowing from another author.
3 main types of plagiarism. Using another person's exact words without putting words or sentences in quotation marks, without proper citation and reference. Direct use of another author's words requires proper citation to acknowledge the original source in a footnote or in the text, and you must put words and sentences in quotation marks. Using another person's words without quotation marks is considered plagiarism, even if the source is mentioned. Generalizing or paraphrasing another person's words without quoting. If you use the text, sentences, written by another author but paraphrase it in your own words, you do not need to enclose the sentence or several sentences in quotation marks. However, you should still cite the source either in a footnote or directly in the text. Basic techniques that will help the author avoid plagiarism. To avoid plagiarism, you need to know how to paraphrase the text, how to make quotations, and how to properly cite sources. Paraphrasing involves rewording the original text while preserving its meaning, ensuring the result is distinct and not a verbatim repetition, word for word. The author can replace words from the original source with synonyms or other forms. It will be advisable to move parts of the already paraphrased text, for example, to change the places of paragraphs if the meaning is not lost. Paraphrasing allows you to use the ideas of the original source by retelling the text of another author in your own words. To paraphrase, the author does not cite the text, but, again, must make a reference to the original source of information. When quoting an author verbatim, the text should be enclosed in quotation marks. Quotations are words of the original which the author chose to reinforce his opinion, but it is not necessary to abuse quotations and verbatim expressions in the text. Thus, paraphrasing is the opinion of another author transmitted only in compliance with the content of the statement without preserving the form, and direct speech is a verbatim text in which the lexical, syntactic, and stylistic features of the text are preserved. The consequences of plagiarism can be professional, ethical, and legal. Before you start writing an essay, you need to understand what plagiarism is. Familiarize yourself with the nature of plagiarism and discover how to steer clear of it with integrity. The rules are easy to follow. If you have doubts about the uniqueness of the text, try using online programs to check texts for plagiarism before publishing the essay. Negligence or unethical behavior may result in reputational damage, professional setbacks, and broader consequences. Plagiarism can lead to serious and wide-ranging consequences affecting individuals across all fields and levels. Ignorance does not excuse the author from the ethical and legal consequences of using someone else's texts as his own. A successful author should master writing skills and practice writing across various genres. Writing skills are an important part of communication. Becoming a writer takes a lot of practice. It's easier to improve your writing skills when you have a good foundational grasp. Develop your vocabulary. Readers may perceive repetition in the text or inappropriate use of words. Look in the dictionary more often. Remember that the vocabulary used in the written work should correspond to the level of education of your audience.